You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, Principal Matters listeners. Welcome back to another conversation between Will Parker, myself, and my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, as we step into another week. Jen, by the time we've recorded this, you will have returned from a great event where you guys were talking about innovative approaches to training some social workers in your school. I will have been wrapping up a crazy April month of PD. But I'm also really excited because I'm getting feedback from friends on my new book, Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love. And I wanted to just take a minute and today to talk a little bit about some of the content I created around pathways of understanding. Before I do, though, let me just pause for a second, because April 21st means most people have finished their spring breaks. Most people are either in the middle of or wrapping up testing. Most people are looking now at what I call the slog. You know, that those last weeks before the end of school where you get no breaks and it's like, and you're a runner. So this is like the end of the race where you're tired, you're hungry, you're thirsty, your legs are starting to go, and you've just got to gut it out, Jen.
Right.
So listeners, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just like, I'm just curious, Jen, as you step into that end of the year, what's the mindset you try to put on knowing this is going to be the slog?
Right. Well, my mindset is comes from experience of knowing that the slog looks a lot worse at the beginning of the slog than during it or at the end of it. So I say this to my own children at home, like, yeah, it seems like it's going to be a slog, but just do one day at a time. Just get up and do that day. And you're going to actually find quite a bit of joy and excitement in each one of those days. And so 8 weeks from now, you'll look back and you'll say, well, that was fun. So don't get intimidated by the slog, because there's a lot of awesome that's going to happen during that time.
Yeah, I try to tell myself two things. One is, and this took me a long time to get to this mindset, because when I was younger, I used to just dread the slog. I would just be like, oh, because that's when conflicts increase, student disciplines usually gets worse, teachers get more stressed, parents get more stressed. And so I used to have this dread. And then I finally just decided it's going to happen regardless of how I feel. So how about I just step in anticipating that those things are going to happen today? So how can I have a mindset ready for it? And then how can I also at the same time have that other mindset, which is, how can I end this year? Is it possible? And I know this sounds like Pollyannish, but is it possible for me to end this year with as much energy as I started it? Because we just want to kind of just like, let's just give up and let's just like, give in to the slog. But there is something, I don't know, Jen, maybe it's just Will's mind games, but there was something really helpful for me to think about, just looking at those faces again, looking at the teachers and thinking, I was so excited to see them at the beginning of the year. How can I hold on to that even as we're wrapping up the year? Because yes, we're tired. It's the end of the race, but we still care about each other. So I don't know. That's Will's way, I think, of trying to hold on in the slog.
Right. Right. No, we'll all make it through. We always do. Everyone always has. So it's not a question of if we can, it's a question of how we will.
Well, Jen, let me try to, in these Monday Matters where we're talking about my new book, I don't want this to be the audio book version of my book. What I wanted to be able to do, though, for some of the sessions that we're recording as this new book has come out, is at least give people a taste of what they can expect in the conversations from this book. And so today I wanted to just set on a conversation that I have early in the book about education pathways, because it's been really helpful for me to take a look at the work that we do and recognize the dynamics that make our career path unique and different from others. So let me just speak to some really specifics for just a moment, which is that according to the Economic Policy Institute, this was a study in 2023, teachers on average earn 73.6 cents for every dollar made by other professionals with their educational achievements. That's that that upsets me, because that means that we have dedicated our careers to knowing that we have highly talented, committed people who can't even go to the bathroom during the day sometimes, who we know automatically compared to other professionals will be making less money. And I know that other people outside of our field will say, yeah, but you got your summer vacations or you got your winter break. And I'm not suggesting that we don't also have wonderful parts built into the work that we're doing. But I do think it's important for us to just recognize that when we choose the career of education, it's a pathway. And it's a pathway that automatically has some obstacles or challenges that other pathways don't. But even within the pathways that we've chosen, there are options. And I think for when I rewind to Will as a 24, 25-year old, and I thought about my career going into education, I could only picture one thing, and that was, what does the life of a teacher look like moving forward? And then several years into that work, when I began to look at the work of administration, then I was like, oh, okay, well, that's another option. Administration would be another option. I was really surprised, and this actually originally was came to me from a book called "In Praise of the American Educator" by Rick Dufour. When I started seeing some other models that existed within education, and one of them that I wanted to just pull out for today's conversation was a model that's used for education majors in Singapore. Because in Singapore, university students are asked when they are choosing education as their major to consider three pathways in which to prepare for. One, teaching with the goal of becoming a master teacher, a coach, advisor, or mentor. Two, teaching with the goal of becoming a researcher, a college level instructor, or a developer of resources and curriculum. Or three, teaching with the goal of school administration with an understanding of organizational management, budgets, and human resources. Just looking at that from the perspective of the beginning of your career was really eye-opening to me, because it probably took me years to figure out that those options even existed. And so one of the reasons I wanted to start there, Jen, is because a lot of times when people reach out to me with those questions, what should I do next? How do I know I'm making the right decision? What are the pros and cons in front of me? What I've discovered is a lot of times we're limiting the decisions that we're making because we're not even aware that there's more options. And I'm not trying to prescribe what the conflict is here that we're addressing, but let's just use the trajectory of my career as that thing, or I've been offered a new position, or I think I'm ready to do something new, or I'm considering applying for this position. And I think one of the questions that I like to just ask people, a couple of questions is what's in front of you something you want to do? And then two, are you limiting yourself by only sticking to the traditional options that you think are available and not thinking outside the box? And so let me stop there, Jen, because I can see your wheels turning. But that's just a place that I like to begin when I think about the different pathways that could exist within our work.
Right. Well, I think you're not alone in, when you got your first teaching job thinking, okay, I'll do this for 30 or 35 years, because that's what those preparatory programs do for us, right? And we've all been students, and as students, we saw a lot of teachers, and we saw a lot of career-long teachers, and we probably saw one principal, and maybe we saw the head or the arm of a superintendent. So we don't really have a tangible example of what that looks like. And so my advice to people is, if you're teaching and you are happy and you still think it's what you want to do, that's great. Stay there. I don't want anyone to misunderstand that we feel leadership is the only way to go. But by nature of listening to this podcast, we can assume that the listeners did get that bug to do something else, to lead. I remember for me, the moment was I was teaching language arts, and I thought, I cannot teach proper use of a semicolon for the next 25 years. I cannot do it. And so here's where my perspective comes in. One mistake I think people make is they try to overly plan their career. They say, I'll do this for 5 years, then I'll do this for 5 more years. And then because openings don't actually happen like that. So what I always say to people is be ready for the job you might want. Get the degree that you might need for the job that you might want, even if you don't see a clear path forward. Um, I also think it's important to point out that this was part of my dissertation work. Education leadership falls into two buckets. One is career bound and one is place bound. And so if you're career bound, you will move. You will move your family, you will move yourself, you will go after what you want for the position you want. Sometimes though, people are place bound. Their family is deeply rooted into a town, a city, an environment, a community, and they're going to stay there. And if the openings don't come, then that's okay. They're happy with their current job. And so I think it's important to answer that question for yourself too. If I am restless, okay, am I career bound or am I place bound? Because that will really change what decisions I make.
Well, I'll give a reference to a book that was helpful for me a long time ago, probably 20 years ago now. I picked up a book by Dan Miller called 48 Days to the Work You Love because I remember wrestling with am I really doing the thing that I'm most competent at? Am I really doing the work that I love? And it was interesting because that book takes you through a series of reflections on your competencies, your skill sets, the things that bring you joy. And the good news is after I finished the book, I was like, I should be a teacher. I mean, I should be an educator. This is the thing that I'm really good at. But I think that to my surprise, the more that I studied the field of what we do, I realized that if I had gone back to the beginning of my years as an education major, I don't think I realized then I mean, I had some understanding of this, but Jen, listeners won't be surprised to know that being an educator means a lot of things. It can mean teaching in a public school setting, a private school setting. It can mean instructional coaching. It can mean administration. It could mean doing schools in an international setting. It could mean creating resources and supports. It can mean writing textbooks and curriculum. It can mean leading professional. There's a lot of different ways that education can be that those gifts and competencies that you have can be translated in the work you do. It's one of the reasons why even though I'm certified as a superintendent, I chose not to become a superintendent because the competencies that I have, the places where I feel like where I find the most joy and can make the most difference, weren't fitting with that kind of title. And so, you and I have done the show long enough that we have both changed a lot in the positions that we have and in the work that we've done. We're later in our careers than we were when we first started doing these conversations. But so whenever I'm thinking about pathways, it's just a helpful place for me to start by thinking about, what is the pathway that I'm currently following? And if I'm thinking about options and changes as I look ahead, am I basing those on what's most familiar? Or am I willing to think outside the box when I think about potential options? Two, how am I analyzing both my skills and my talents and applying them to the industry options available for me, like you said, whether it's career or place, that's filtering those. And then if I think ahead 3 years or 5 years or 10 years from now, how does that change the way that I'm thinking about the opportunities that are in front of me too? So I'll stop there, Jen, but those are just some thoughts that I'm inviting listeners into as we, if they're interested in learning more from my new book, Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love.
One thing too, I really want to point out is although professional paths appear linear from the outside, they are so not. Mm-hmm. And this is why I say again, be ready for the job you might want. You never know, even if you're in a small rural town somewhere, you never know what openings might happen. You might think this principal or this superintendent are going to stay here 25 years. Nothing's ever going to change. You never know. You never know what new jobs might poke up. You never know when your interests might change or your family dynamics might change. And so I think it's important to be nimble and to be flexible and to actually, this is critical. Love whatever you're doing in this moment.
Mhm.
If you're waiting for the perfect job or the perfect pathway to open up, it probably won't look like you think it will. My dear friend Katie Nicholson said that she's an excellent school principal, and she never intended to go into the principalship. She loved special education, loved being a special education teacher. And she says, but my rule is walk into a door if it opens, walk in and see. And she has been richly rewarded for that mindset because she doesn't look for the doors. She looks for open doors.
Well, Jen, anytime I talk to you about any topic that I've thought through, and especially as we're having today's conversation, I was just thinking, man, I wish Jen had co-authored this book because you just added so many other wonderful layers of thought and onto this content. So thank you so much for just letting me reflect with you on that. And Principal Matters listeners, you can always check out that resource at my website at williamdparker.com/books. And Jen, as we wrap up this week, I know that our flagship show on Wednesday, we want to invite listeners to be listening to that, and our encore shows on Friday. But until next time, we're so grateful that you listen. Please recommend our show to others and rate it and review it and all those things that make it more visible for friends. If you find this valuable, we'd love to continue to grow and to meet other leaders too. But Jen, thank you. How can leaders stay connected with you this week?
They can check out my website at jenschwanke.com. It's got a little bit of a new look, so tune in anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, Principal Matters listeners. Have a great week. And until next time, thank you for doing what matters. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.